Okay, our live stream is up and running. We're going to start on page 6 of our Siddurim. All good. Page 6 of our Siddurim with Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharei, Malachei El Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Chomlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bo'echen l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei El Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Chomlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei El Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Chomlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seichen l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei El Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Chomlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'd like to invite up a guest to light our Shabbos candles. They've already been lit, look at that. But to say the blessings for us here today, do we have any volunteers?
There's a lot of feedback, that's why we keep saying the doorbell.
Liz, would you like to come on up just to read the English or the Hebrew? You're a guest. Would you like to?
Yeah, whatever. Here, I'm happy to.
Bring your siddur if you can on page 7.
Okay. Liz?
There's nobody there.
Ghosts?
Yes.
Okay.
So on page 7, the English will have the responsive reading. We'll join together for it.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Come let us welcome Shabbat.
May its radiance illuminate our hearts.
Light is a symbol of the divine,
The eternal is my light and my salvation.
and light is the symbol of the divine within us.
The human spirit is the light of the eternal.
Light is the symbol of the divine law.
For the mitzvah is a lamp and a Torah a light.
And light is the symbol of Israel's mission.
I, the eternal, have made you a covenant people, a light to the nations.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu ladlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
May we all be blessed with Shabbat joy.
Amen.
May we all be blessed with Shabbat peace.
Amen.
And may we all be blessed with Shabbat holiness.
Amen. Thank you. We're going to now turn to page 9 of our Siddurim, page 9 for Lechadodi. Lechadodi, Legrakala, Yadadai, 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 B'nei Shabbat. Nekabela, Lechadodi, Legrakala, Yadadai, 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 B'nei Shabbat. Nekabela, Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad, Ishmianu elcham yuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, Lishem otiferet v'letihila, Lechai doidi likrakala, Yadadai, 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 B'nei Shabbat. Nekabela, Lechai doidi likrakala, Yadadai, 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 B'nei Shabbat. Nekabela, likrat Shabbat, lechu v'nelcha, ki hi mekor habracha, merosh mikadem nesuka, sof ma'asaha v'matra tehila, lechai doidi likrakala, Yadadai, 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 B'nei Shabbat. Nekabela, Lechai doidi likrakala, Yadadai, 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 B'nei Shabbat. Nekabela, Iori, Kiva Orek Kumi Ori, Shir Daberi, Kavod Adonai, Alai Negila, Lechai doidi likrakala, Yadadai, 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 B'nei Shabbat. Nekabela, Lechai doidi likrakala, Yadadai, 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 B'nei Shabbat. Nekabela. Now we face the entrance or exit of our building as we welcome in the Shabbos bride. Boi v'shalom atzeret bala, gam besimcha uvetzolach, תוך אמונה עם סגולה, בואי קלה, לחיידותי לקרא קלה, ידעי פני שבת. נקבלה, לחיידותי לקרא קלה, ידעי פני שבת. נקבלה. Remain standing now for the Hatsi Kaddish found on page 11 of our Sidurims. Yitkada Yitkadash Shemei Rabba V'yamadi V'rachilotei V'yamlech Malchutei V'chayechon U'v'yoimechon U'vayetecho Beit Yisrael Ba'agala U'bizman Kariv V'yameru Amen Yahei Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Olam Me'almaya Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitba'ar, v'yitraman, v'yitnasei, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shamei v'kudasha, v'rechu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush v'chata v'nechemata, damiran mi'alma, v'yameru, amen. Page 12, we join together for the Baruchu. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Page 13, we'll join together in the italicized text. Eternal God, your majesty is proclaimed by the marvels of earth and sky. Sun, moon, and stars testify to your power and wisdom. Day follows day in endless succession, and the years vanish, but your sovereignty endures. Though all things pass, not let your glory depart from us. Help us to become co-workers with you and endow our fleeting days with abiding worth. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. Blessed are you, O Eternal, who brings on the evening. Page 14 will join together for the translation for Revelation with eternal love. With eternal love you've loved your people, the house of Israel. Torah and commandments, statutes and judgments you've taught us. Therefore, O Eternal our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will discuss your statutes and rejoice in the words of your Torah and your commandments forever. For they are our lives, and they lengthen our days, and we will meditate upon them day and night. May you never remove your love from us, forever and ever. Blessed are you, O Eternal, who loves God's people, Israel. Page 15, we join together for the Shema prayer. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. You may be seated for the V'ahavta found on page 16 of our Sidurims. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol lebavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'chayu ha'divarim ha'eleh Asher Anochi Mitzavecha Hayom Alvavecha Vishnatan Levanecha Vidibar Tabam Vishitecha Bevetecha Uletecha Baderech Ushachbecha Ukumecha Ukshartam Leot Al Yadecha Vihayulototafot Beinenecha Uktatam Al Mizuzoit Betecha Uvisharecha Leman tizkeru va'asitem eko mitzvotai v'hitem kirushim lelolechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher chotzeiti etchem mi'eretz Mitzrayim leot lachem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Amen. Page 17 will join together for a responsive reading. Eternal truth is that you alone are God, and there is none else.
May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exult in your justice.
Let them beat their swords into plowshares.
Let them beat their spears into pruning hooks.
Let nation not lift up sword against nation, let them study war no more.
You shall not hate another in your heart. You shall love your neighbor as yourself.
Let the stranger be in your midst, you as the native, for you once strangers in the land of Egypt.
From the house of bondage we went forth to freedom, so let all be free to sing with joy.
Page 18, we join together for Mi Chamocha. Mi Chamocha Ba'alim Adonai, Mi Chamocha Netar by Kodesh, Nora Tilot Osei Fele. אחותך ראו בניך בוקיים לפני משה, זה אלי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כפרה אדוני את יעקב ואומר חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל Yisrael. Page 19, we'll join together for the translation for Hashkivenu. Cause us, O eternal our God, to lie down in peace and to awaken us each morning to life renewed with strength. Spread over us the holy shelter of your peace.
Help us to order our lives by your counsel and lead us in the paths of righteousness. Be a shield about us, protecting us from hate and war, from pestilence and sorrow.
Curb also within us the inclination to do evil and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Guard our going out and our coming into life with peace from this time forth and forever.
Blessed are you, O eternal. So your peace is spread over us, over all God's people, Israel, and over Jerusalem.
Page 20, we'll join together for Vishamru. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. בני ובני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. כי שת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. We now rise for the Amidah prayer on page 21 of our Sidurims. Adonai sefotai titaku fia gita ilatecha, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevii Geula Livnei B'nechem, L'man Shamo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Mashiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Be'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor L'Olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol Atah Rav V'Hoshia, Mashiv Ruach U'Marit HaGeshem, Mechakel Chaim B'Chesed, Mechayei HaKol B'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umido Melach, Mechaye Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman Ata L'Hachayot HaKol Baruch Ata Adonai Mechaye HaKol Ata Kadosh V'Shim HaKadosh V'Shim B'Chol Yom Yahallelu Chasela Baruch Ata Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. We daven silently until page 29, where we'll join together for Oseh Shalom.
Sorry. Liz wants to know if she could read this poem. It's for the kidnapped people in Israel.
Maybe not tonight.
When she comes up, we'll talk.
Okay. All right.
Okay, when she comes up. For Sidurims. Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'imru Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'yameru Amen. So, good Shabbos, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbos.
So many of you saw the questions that went out for this week. So you are a little bit familiar, hopefully so, with this week's Torah portion. Can anyone say anything about this week's Torah portion? It's Parashat Pikudei.
It's me.
Yes, it's usually you, Liz.
It's all about the tabernacle and getting the tabernacle ready, all the different parts and the robes for Aaron and his sons. And it's all about the money. I didn't understand that. What was the money for?
So I'll talk about that a little bit today, but I'll answer that question. But yeah, but I just want you to summarize anything that you're.
And the oil that Moses anointed with everyone.
Okay, all right. If you recall from last year and years past, this was the opportunity in last year that I talked a little bit about the construction of the ark that I had undertaken while in Cincinnati. I talked a little bit about that earlier today with Lois as well. But the ark last year was something that I had honed in a little bit about. But today we're going to focus on something a lot different. And that's because we have a guest speaker today, and I'll be inviting him up shortly. But I want to summarize our Torah portion a little bit in a way that will lead into his discussion, which he'll be sharing with us for today. So in Parshat Pikudei, we witnessed the meticulousness in which the Israelites recorded their contributions. Within every ounce of gold, monetary contribution, thread of fabric, with every resource, everything was carefully accounted for. And this act of meticulous record keeping is not merely a logistical exercise, but it is a testament to the importance of accountability in our lives. Accountability is the cornerstone of our faith, and it is a fundamental aspect of living a righteous Jewish life. And it requires us to take ownership for our actions. And just as the Israelites accounted for all of the resources in the construction of the tabernacle, so too must we be diligent in the stewardship and the blessings bestowed upon us. But accountability extends beyond the individual actions taken by ourselves. It also encompasses our responsibilities to our communities and a society at large. And this is where the connections to the Israeli Religious Action Center, IRAC, becomes particularly relevant to today. The Israeli Religious Action Center embodies the spirit of accountability for advocating for social justice, equality, and religious freedom in Israel. The work that the Israeli Religious Action Center is grounded in is the belief that every individual deserves to be treated with dignity, respect, regardless of their backgrounds or beliefs. Through their tireless efforts, they hold institutions and authorities accountable for upholding these principles and ensuring that the values of democracy, justice, and equality are upheld in an Israeli society. And as members of a Jewish community, we had a responsibility to support organizations like the Israeli Religious Action Center in their pursuit of justice and righteousness. And we must stand alongside them as allies in the fight against discrimination, oppression, and injustice. Just as the Israelites accounted for every resource in the construction of the tabernacle, so too must we account for the contributions to the betterment of a society. In Parshat Pikudei, we're reminded of the importance of accountability in our lives. We are called upon to emulate the meticulousness of the Israelites in our own actions, both individually and collectively. So let us strive to uphold the values of honesty, integrity, and justice in all that we do, and let us support organizations like the Israeli Religious Action Center in their noble mission to create a more just and equitable society. So it is my honor at this time to introduce Lois Frankenthaler, Director of Resource Development at the Israeli Religious Action Center. And as noted earlier, the Israeli Religious Action Center offers legislative support for the civil rights of marginalized communities in Israel, including the progressive Jewish communities of Reform and Conservative Judaism, the LGBTQ communities of Israel, and racial minorities of the state. Their aim is to safeguard the democratic principles of the State of Israel. Lewis comes to IRAC after working for more than 2 decades for human rights, non-governmental organizations, and resource development. He has a history in history, law, and Jewish education, and lives in Jerusalem with his spouse and 2 grown children. Lewis will now share some words about the important work his organization does with us for this Shabbat. But before you do speak, I want to share one anecdotal story you can come on up here and stand up here as part of this. I don't know, you must remember this, but it was the year after I had come back from the Year in Israel program, and one of our classmates entered into a restaurant, and it was on the day that Israeli students and
For Pride.
yeah, for Pride, there is a Pride March that is held in Jerusalem, which I was part of during my Year in Israel program. It is customary for our rabbinical students to be part of this march as a show of solidarity for marginalized communities, of which is the LGBTQ community in Israel. So I wore my shirt, I carried the exact posters that we see behind us here today, and we marched together in Jerusalem during my Year in Israel program. The year that followed me, one of our classmates actually marched alongside all of our classmates and entered into a restaurant which I had gone to many times upon. It was a pizza place in Israel that I had visited frequently upon going to Israel. And he came right after attending the march wearing his shirt, very happy, proud of who he was, and the person standing behind the counter asked him, "Are you gay?" And he said, "Yes." The store owner told him to leave. The Religious Action Center took up the case to defend the civil rights of our classmate, and I'm very appreciative for the work that you guys did in protecting our classmates while during the Year in Israel program. So thank you for that. With that, I'd like to introduce you as tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the work that you guys did.
So I would say that I'm happy that we were able to do that.
Yes.
I've heard that, and
Oh, I'm going to get you a mic hooked up right now. I'm sorry. Here you go.
well,
Yes.
okay. So I've heard that. That took place before my time
Okay.
at IRAC. So as Rabbi Shmuel mentioned, my name is Louis. I do live in Jerusalem. I grew up not far from here in Monmouth County. We were part of Temple Shari Emmett. My parents now live in Monroe, in one of the
Adult community.
adult communities off of Applegarth, off of Federal Road. I forget the name of it, to tell you the truth. Pines, a pine something? I don't know.
The Pines, yes.
No, not the Pines.
Pines.
Yeah. Anyway, they've been there for about, I guess, 5 or 6 years. But they continue to go to Shari Emmett, where we grew up, and where I grew up, and where my brothers grew up, and now, you know, I guess they're at that age where, you know, I was on my way to the airport to come here. We're going to spend a week working and doing speaking in New York. Orly Erzlikovsky, who you met in Philadelphia, came early to go to CCAR and to go to New York. So I'm on my way, and to the airport, my brother calls me. Hey, how you doing? What's up? What's new? What's going on? Dad's in the hospital. I'll pick you up Thursday morning. We'll go visit him. He's in the Princeton Medicals. He's 86. He's got end-stage kidneys and heart and everything like that. But he's a trooper, and he's hanging in there. So I came in early, and I was, last time I was here, it was in October, the famous October, we were supposed to do that, you know, a week in New York back then, but you know, then what happened, it happened. And oftentimes when I speak, it's sort of a you know, I always wish that we could go back to October 6th. And not, you know, and not have had October 7th, but we did. We had. October 7th happened. In Israel, a lot of people have a tendency to say, you know, this is October 175th day of October. You know, like every day is October 7th. My tendency is to say no. October 7th happened. It was an atrocity. We have to move forward. We have to keep being the people that we were, and we have to keep working for the values and for the kind of Israel that we wanted to have happen and to be before October 6th. So, like Shmuel said, I do live in Jerusalem now. I've lived there for 30 years. I was originally a HUC student, and I was going to go to Cincinnati. And I'm sorry.
That's where I went. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was going to go there, and I was really sort of excited about it. But one thing led to another, and I ended up leaving HUC. Sometimes I like to say, I had a discussion with God. She decided she doesn't believe in me. I decided I don't believe in him. We parted companies. Everything's good and fine now. I'm married to a wonderful, wonderful woman. She's Israeli. She's a midwife, which I think is at least one of us is doing something, bringing something good into the world. And we have two kids, 21-year-old and a 24-year-old. Both of them are not in the service now. They're both out of the army, thankfully. And I say that, understanding that lots of people have their kids and family and stuff in the army now, and my hopes and prayers are that the things that we've already read about come to fruition, and that the plowshares and that the pruning hooks become our reality as opposed to the swords and the tanks and the guns. So what I do want to sort of talk about is that I've been at IRAC for a year. Prior to that, I spent most of my time in Israel working for human rights organizations that have dealt with the issues of human rights for Palestinians under occupation and that sort of thing. And I came to IRAC having been a lifelong Reform Jew, I would say. And believing that that if we have faith, our faith has to work for positive purposes. We have to do something with it. It has to be more than just the words that we read in our books, in our Sidurim. It has to be the way that, as Heschel is said to have said, although the story is a little bit more complex, but to pray with our feet, to work. To do the work of social justice that we believe that is part of our tradition, but not just to speak about it, but to rather do it. And that's what the Israel Religious Action Center does. That's what the Reform movement, I think, does in Israel. And like I said, I joined the organization almost a year ago to the day. In fact, I think March 15th was my official starting day. And you sort of you jump into any organization and you sort of have to jump in feet first, get your feet wet. Maybe the water's cold, maybe the water's warm, who knows. But when I jumped into IRAC, the water was swirling and tidal waves here and there, and everything was just so dynamic and so moving. Why? Because as Israel's, I would say, only religiously based, faith-based civil rights organization, we were quite literally at the front of the barricades, on the front lines of a movement, of a pro-democracy movement that began basically at the end of 2022 with the inauguration of what we have consistently said was Israel's most extremist, right-wing, anti-democratic government, misogynistic, any other, word that's not so nice had happened. And what had happened is that they, started to what we call implement a judicial coup. And this judicial coup would have undermined the values and the accomplishments and the things that we have been doing for years and years and years, like protecting the LGBTQ community, like protecting the rights of women, like protecting the rights of Reform and conservative Jews in Israel for their rabbis to receive pay to at least begin to climb up the ladder of parity, to protect the rights of women not to have their images vandalized in the public sphere, to be able to fight racism and discrimination and incitement at the levels that we're able to do it. the things that we've done, I'm not going to laundry list them for you. I've actually brought some literature and you're free to take. I think one of the most revolutionary things we've done at IRAC is done a year-end report in less than, essentially with pictures and everything, less than 15 pages, and with big print. So it's an easy read, and we'd love for you to take it and take a look at it. And we'd also love for you to sign up for our newsletter, because that's how we keep ourselves in contact with everybody. But this judicial overhaul that was going to take place is, for us, it was one of the most profound threats against Israeli democracy that we've seen. And, and it's important to say that Israeli democracy has been quite fragile before that. I did go to law school. I'm not a practicing lawyer, as my potential clients would say, thankfully. If you're a law graduate from a foreign, university, or you're non-Israeli, you have to take an exam in order to do a year's clerkship before you're allowed to take the bar exam. So a bunch of us were together in Jerusalem, guys from the U.S., from Western Europe. There was this one guy from Holland who became a really successful tax attorney, from what I understand. And so you learn about the law. You learn what the nuances of Israeli law. It's basically a common law system in a lot of ways. And then we got to the section on constitutional law, and we're sitting there, and this guy who was teaching us, a Haredi guy, an attorney, British accent, looked at us and said, "Well, Israel has no constitution." And I quite literally remember looking around and speaking to some of the guys there. They were all guys there. I guess I don't know why. Well, I guess I do know why now, because who taught the course, but I was not aware of that back then. We looked around and we looked at each other and said, okay, it's not going to end well. And then, a few decades later, we're seeing that it's not ending well. That our fragile democracy that we have, our system, and again, a lot of times I find myself comparing it to the U.S. system, and believe me, I grew up in America. I grew up as a Jew in America. I grew up as a progressive in America, and it's certainly not perfect. And if I look at the Supreme Court's most recent decisions, and the oy vey is, as somebody who was democratic with a small d, somebody who was progressive with a small p, somebody who was Jewish, let's say, and feels that if we want to live safely in a community, we have to live safe. We have to live in a community that's going to protect all of our rights, which is why I think for so many decades, Jews in America have gravitated towards the political, again with a small p, tendencies that would support a women's right to choose, that would look at what's going on in Texas and in Alabama with IVF and so many other things, and would just be so alarmed. And that's what we saw happening in Israel also. The government that was installed, that was elected and inaugurated, was a government that was had such a kinship to so many other regressive political tendencies that were happening, that we see happening all over the world, including here. And it's very disturbing. The nature of Israeli democracy, the checks and balances, especially since 1992, when Aharon Barak, the grandparent of Israeli constitutional law in so many ways, instituted the principle of judicial review, that everything is reviewable. And not just because he wanted to give judges the power to make law and to overthrow a legislative process, because there was a realization that Israeli democracy and the idea of accountability and of again, the system of checks and balances depended on a Supreme Court. because, okay, unlike the US, which, I mean, sometimes it's dysfunctional, right? We have two houses of, in the legislature, Senate and Congress, and they act as checks on each other. The executive branch versus the legislative branch. The Supreme Court, a constitution that's written imperfect. I mean, you know, does anybody see that there's a comma in the Second Amendment somewhere that would sort of like, you know, modify the absolute right to carry a gun wherever you wanted to? I don't know. The idea that, I don't know, you actually have to have somebody who was harmed before you bring their case to the Supreme Court, you know, not just some person who has a website, who's a website designer, is afraid somewhere along the line in Colorado is going to be forced to make a website for an LGBTQ, oh my God, couple, and then goes to the Supreme Court. And we see that, you know, that the people who are bringing those cases to the Supreme Court, who are inventing those cases, are the people that we should be most concerned about. And those are the people that we are also seeing as having the highest level of kinship to a lot of the political tendencies that were going on in Israel. So what did we do? We took, one of the first things that we did was we you know, in Kaplan, I forget what it's called, a marquee, I guess it's called, where you have a sign, you know, in neon lights. And in neon lights it said, Nagen ala b'shem ha'yahadut, nagen ala demokratia. In the name of Judaism, we're going to protect democracy. And that was our motto. That's what we did. We had T-shirts, and we still have T-shirts, and we have bags, tote bags. I actually have a bunch of tote bags out in the car. Anybody who wants one can come out with me to the trunk, and I'll hand out. But they're really nice tote bags, and I think they're very relevant. And we were on the front lines of the protests, and the protests grew and grew and grew. They started they started at the end of the beginning of 2023, and they quite literally mushroomed. And we had Rick Jacobs spoke in Tel Aviv. Orly, the executive director, spoke in Haifa and in Jerusalem. But we were out there marching. What we were marching for, what we were demonstrating for, is quite literally the values that we have been representing for years. You know, the values of love thy neighbor, love your neighbor, love the other. I think it's better if we would say, instead of love your neighbor, but love the other. Especially if you don't like them, especially if they're not like you. But that's, you know, quite literally what we're talking about. Justice, justice shall you pursue. It's, you know, one would think it would be like a foregone conclusion, something that you would take for granted. But unfortunately it's not. Those are the things that we're working to protect, things that we know will not be protected if this sort of judicial overhaul were to take place. So that's what we're working for. And racism is not my Judaism, a basic principle. And one of the cases that we won this year was the Get Taxi case. Do you know what Get Taxi is? It's, you know what Uber is, right, or Lyft. So I always think of it this way. Say you wanted to, you know, you go into Uber, what if you had like a function on Uber that says, I want to choose the race of my driver. Can you do that? No. I want to choose the religion of my driver. No. I want to make sure my driver is not African American, or I want to make sure my driver is not, you know, Latino X or gay or whatever. But in Jerusalem, in Israel, we have an application called Get Taxi, where you can, you know, order a taxi prepaid, same sort of idea. But in Jerusalem, they very cleverly came up with an idea of what's called Get Limhadrin. Limhadrin is, I think it's a Yiddish word, but I'm not sure, for extra kosher. So the idea was that if you wanted to sign up, if you're a taxi driver in Jerusalem, and if you wanted to sign up for this, to be a part of this function on the application, you have to promise that you will not drive your taxi on Shabbat. And that way, people can sign up with this function, get their taxi, and make sure that their taxi was not driven on Shabbat. So therefore, you get a so-called kosher taxi. Again, thank God I'm not a rabbi, but can a taxi be kosher?
Taxi can't be kosher, no.
There's no such a thing. I mean, you know, you can
Not
probably,
from my vantage point, no.
right, you can probably have a cheeseburger and spill it all over the back of the taxi, and you're not gonna make it unkosher or not kosher or whatever. But that was the idea. Now, 50% of Jerusalem's cab drivers are Palestinian, are not Jewish. Were they able to, and they drive and they work on Shabbat, oy vey. But that's what they do, that's how they make their money. And then, were they able to sign up for this function? Take a guess. No, they weren't. They weren't able to sign up for it. So only Jewish cab drivers were able to sign up for this function. So beyond the fact that, you know, that if you're not part of this function, you lose money because you're automatically eliminated from this, you know, this pool of potential clients, but it's racist. And so we found out about it. We found out about it in 2015, and from what I understand, we actually went into cabs with hidden cameras, went and called the dispatchers with hidden microphones, went to the office with hidden cameras, and we figured out that, wow, that's what they were doing. That they created a system where they can eliminate the possibility of ordering a cab driver and finding out that his name is Mahmoud instead of Moshe. And we fought, we won. The service has been canceled this summer. And actually a bunch of cab drivers are going to be compensated. And two shared society organizations in Jerusalem will also get a donation from the GET organization, from the GET company. So those are the things that we do and the things that we need to do. I think one of the other really critical things, you know, the idea of creating a family, and I think about that, like this whole idea of you know, the IVF and the stuff that was happening in Alabama. The people who have, you know, overruled IVF, or the people who are part of this war on reproductive freedom, but then let's say have used IVF and that sort of thing, the same kind of people who would deny an LGBTQ couple the right to adopt a child. And that's sort of been the law, the norm in Israel for so many years. And this summer we won a case, a landmark decision, that said that that essentially gave the rights to LGBTQ people the right to adopt a child. Originally, the adoption law said a man and a woman, and the Supreme Court decided to reread the law as saying when you say a man and a woman, you can also mean to say a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, which opened the doors in an unprecedented way for LGBTQ couples to adopt children. And those sort of things, those sort of ideas, those sort of concepts, the basic concept of freedom, basic concept of liberty, of democracy and equality, are impossible under the regime that was envisioned by the government that took power, that came into office at the end of 2022. And we as Reform Jews, we as people of a democratic persuasion, again, democratic with a small d, said that cannot stand. And an unprecedented pro-democracy movement emerged. And this pro-democracy movement was not just like, you know, crazy leftists, you know, liberals who've been, you know, fighting the good fight for so many years, but people that you wouldn't have expected to go out into the streets. If you were, I don't know if you had if you've been to any of the marches or anything like that during that year, but we had people out there saying, I'm a religious Zionist for democracy. And the Religious Zionist Party was part of, you know, one of the main parties that was, you know, Simcha Rothman, who was the head of the Law and Justice Committee, the committee that Rabbi Gilad Kariv used to be in charge of in the previous government. So that they, you know, the religious Zionist party, the religious nationalist party was part of the party that was heavily involved in trying to overthrow this judicial system of judicial review, of reasonability. And so we were out there, and all the other organizations, Brothers and Sisters in Arms, and so many other members of civil society grew up and coalesced together. And then, and I think that things were working. I definitely saw a change. When people spoke about equality and stuff like that at the beginning, they were afraid to talk about the, let's say, Palestinians. They were afraid to talk about Arabs in Israel. They were afraid to talk about, you know, some of the left-wing movements. But as things progressed and people started to talk about equality, they understood that if you really want to have a liberal democratic state, then you have to, that means you have to include everybody, and it can't just be lip service. You actually have to mean it. Just I'll give you one example. If you've all heard about the pogrom that took place in Hawara some months ago. So one of the chants that became immensely popular, and not just from, like, you know, the extreme left-wing bloc that was there, part of the regular people who would, you know, shout at the police who were trying to restrict our rights to expression, where were you in Hawara? Understanding that if you want to have a democratic society, you have to protect everybody, you have to protect everybody's rights equally. And that's where we were. And then I was actually here on October 6th. I was near Cherry Hill at my brother's. I woke up on the morning of October 7th, which was already the afternoon of October 7th in Israel. And my WhatsApp was bouncing off the wall. And just my family group, my family WhatsApp group. My wife, like I said, was a midwife. She was on a shift. My son was at work. My daughter was up at, she lives in Haifa. She's a madricha for a gap year program. There's a shelter here. Go to the shelter here. Not all of our homes have safe rooms in them. What's going on here? And I turned on, you know, one of the messages that we got was, you know, one of my son's best friends, Leon. That's his last name, but that's what they call him. Last name's like, except for my son, because his name is Frankenthaler. Nobody can just say, hey, Frankenthaler, so they call him Shoshi for some reason. I don't know why. But, you know, a message that Leon had sent to his girlfriend, an SMS, that he was in Golani. He was stationed right along the Gaza border. And he said, I'm shot. There are terrorists on the base. Call for help. Send help. In other words, he was calling his girlfriend, a civilian, in Jerusalem, begging her to get somebody to send help to them, because the state on October 7th had quite literally failed not only its civilians, but its own soldiers. And, you know, they're looking at that now, but we all know that this so-called impregnable wall that cost, and this is what one of the hostages had said when she was released, the so-called impregnable wall was essentially in its 60th week of pregnancy on October 7th, and nobody was there to monitor. Nobody there was there to check. Nobody cared about what was going on. They ignored the warning signs that intelligence, that soldiers based in the intelligence units, the vast majority of them women, were transmitting to their superiors. And this is what happened. It wasn't a pogrom. It wasn't another, in my opinion, another, you know, extension of the Holocaust. Because we were here in the state of Israel, and during the pogroms, the Cossacks, they attacked villages and shtetls and stuff like that had no means of protection, that had no army, that had no sovereignty, that had no way to protect itself. Same thing with the Holocaust. On October 7th, we were supposedly protected by the billion-dollar fence, by the most powerful military, and they were quite literally defeated by a band of Hamas terrorists and others who came in and committed some of the horrific atrocities that are unimaginable and unspeakable and unforgivable, of course. And that's what happened, and that led us into this situation where we are now, where you had a state that essentially failed, you had civil society that thankfully had coalesced and had been so well organized because of most of 2023, and was able to provide the alternatives that the state couldn't provide and still doesn't really want to provide in so many ways. Taking care of citizens, of internally displaced Israelis. The reform movement not only lost one of its communities in Shara Negev in the south, but we, and not just us, but we were sending rabbis to so many of the displaced communities performing spiritual counseling, Kabbalat Shabbat, in so many different places. The whole issue of the captives and the hostages, insane. And just as we were, coalescing around the democracy movement, we began to coalesce around the movement to free the captives. The most important mitzvah is the redemption of captives. And we saw that it's not happening, as there being some other goals that the government, that perhaps the prime minister had, that would have left the captives apparently and unfortunately would leave them subservient to other goals, to ulterior motives perhaps. And so they're still in Gaza. But we've been out there. We've been working for that and trying to be part of this, civil society that took the place of the government that wasn't functioning properly. And the same thing with the issues that we were working on, whether it be racism, whether it be equality. We found that we had to keep working on those, especially racism in a lot of ways, and issues of incitement and that sort of thing. And so the work that we do is long, but we, as they say, we do not have the freedom to stop, to desist. I'd like to thank you for having time to speak with you all.
Thank you. If you have any questions afterwards, Lois will be here. Just want to make sure we stay on time target for closing of Shabbat, because we have people at home as well tonight, and then some of you have a little bit of travel to get to. So, all right, we're going to now turn to page, the very back of our Siddurim for the Misha Be'erak prayer. Our Misha Be'erak list for tonight includes the following names: Miriam Mendel ben Shira, Nachman ben Malka, Shlomo Leib ben Malka, Yisrael Rufin ben Deborah Alka, Alan Lewis, Esther Badruth, Yehuda ben Joseph, Russ Paneri, Gerald Longmore, Sissy Curlin, Isidore Schiffman, Yvette Zamos, Michael Berkowitz, Susan Sklar, David Rothschild, Ellen Rosenbaum, Holly Matthews, Jessica Miller, Phil Miller, Brian Leibowitz, Lynn Ginsberger, Sam Perlman, Erwin Lechner, Myra Levis, Rabbi Alan Darno, Kelly Gustavo, Wendy Sanseveri, Jan Franschel, Gerald Longmore, Bruce Estrin, Aaron Evers, Ida Loffer, Naomi Ashura, Courtney Zabadek, Kami Zabadek, Guy Gordon, Orwin Schwob, Evelyn North. Would anyone like to add any names to our Misha Be'erak for today? Yes.
Greg Rosen.
Greg Rosen.
Linda Boone.
Linda Boone.
Gabriel Levesque.
Gabriel Levesque.
And Lois Flamholz.
Lois Flamholz. The words to the Misha Be'erak. Oh yes, I'm sorry.
Jim Frankenthal.
Jim Frankenthal.
Who else?
Anyone else?
Nadine Busner.
Nadine Busner. Thank you. The words to the Misha Be'erak prayer may be found at the back of our Siddurim. We'll join together. Misha Be'erak Avotenu Mikor Handricha Le'imotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Be'erak Imotenu. Eloheinu mekor habreka le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We now rise for the Aleinu prayer found on page 30 of our Sidurims. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, la'teit gedula l'yotzeh breshit, shelo atzanu kigiyei aratzot, velo samanu kimishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam kalkenu kaken, v'gor aleinu kichol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei amakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehunatei Shamayim V'Yoser Haaretz, U'Moshe Yekaro B'Shamayim Nima'al, U'Shchinatu Zo, V'Govhei Meroimim, Hu Eloheinu Ein Od, En Mitmakenu Epizulato, Kakatu B'Torato, V'Yadata Hayom, V'Hoshevota, Ela bebecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim nima'al, v'yal ha'aretz, mitzachod, ein od, page 31. We therefore hope in you, O eternal our God, soon to behold the splendor of your might. Then will false gods vanish from the earth, and the idols will be utterly cut off, to heal the world with the sovereignty of the Almighty. Then will all acclaim you as their God, and forsaking evil, turn to you alone. Let all who dwell on earth acknowledge that unto you every knee must bend, and every tongue swear loyalty. Before you, O eternal our God, let them humble themselves to your glorious name, let them give honor. Let all accept the yoke of your dominion, that you may rule over, soon and forever. For the dominion is yours, and you will rule in glory, as it is written, the eternal will reign forever and ever. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, Vayom hahu yihyeh Adonai echad, U'shemo echad. We remain standing now for the Mourner's Kaddish. The Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 33 of our Sidurims. In just a moment, I'll be reciting names from our Yortzeit list, as well as members of our community who have recently passed. If you are observing a Yortzeit or in the period of Shoshim, please share with us the name of your loved ones so that we as one community may pray for the elevation of the Neshama to Shamayim above. Today's Yortzeit list includes the following names: Goldie Prestonson, Saul Barrelston, Melvin Watine, Doris Barron, Edith Simcoff, Rachel Becker, Jean Better, Gertrude Silverstone, Jenny Goodman, Etta Perler, Harvey Marcus, Anna Bushbaum Naziano, Marge Francisco, Rebecca Hoberman, Harold Levinson, Milton Goldstein, Eleanor Harris, Charlotte Friedman, Marlene Meltzer, Steve and Carol Lichtenstein, Arlene Sugar and Doris Zuckerman, Len Smolin and Sylvia Margolin. Are there any additional names anyone would like to have added to our list for this evening?
Muriel Sheffrin
Muriel Sheffrin,
and Gail Marcus.
Gail Marcus. If it is your custom, please remain standing for the Mourner's Kaddish on page 33 of our Sidurims. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Bi'alma Divra Hirutei V'yamlech Malchutei, V'chayechon Uvyomechon Uvchayei T'chol Beit Yisrael, V'agala V'zman Kariv V'imru Amen. Yahei Shmei Rabbah Mivorak L'olam Olamei Almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalem v'yitalal shamei dekudasha b'rechu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran v'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shamaya v'chaim aleinu v'el kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom v'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'yokol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort all who are bereaved, and let us say, Amen. You may be seated. Liz, I'd like to invite you up for our announcements at this time.
Prayer for kidnapped Israelis. For all our families of the house of Israel, fellow Jews, who face anguish and captivity, whether on sea or on land, may the divine have compassion upon them and bring them from distress to relief, from darkness to light, from subjugation to redemption, now speedily soon, and let us say, Amen. Saturday, March 16th, Torah study at 10 o'clock a.m., worship 10:30 a.m. Purim baskets, today is the last day to order. More information on weekly email. Purim service, field, supper, and music with Avi, Saturday, March 23rd, 6:30 p.m. More information on weekly email. Rosh Chodesh meditation, April 8th, 7:30 p.m. on Zoom. More information on weekly email. Sisterhood, April 9th, game night, 7 p.m. Book Club, April 18th, 1:30 p.m. at the home of Harriet Katz. They will be discussing the book, Stockholm. Yom HaShoah, Sunday, April 28th, 2 o'clock p.m. at Senior Center. The Henry Rickless Committee, which meets here, is the one who is in charge of the Yom HaShoah, and we hope that most of our members can come. The Rise of Anti-Semitism on College Campuses, Sunday, April 14th, 6:30 p.m. Please RSVP to office. Car Show, September 8th, 2024, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Prospective Student Shabbat for juniors and seniors in high school at Rutgers Hillel, April 12th, 6 to 8 p.m. Social action information on weekly email. Passover food drive. The JFS is asking only for monetary donations, but they need volunteers to help deliver Passover gift cards on April 12th. If you're interested, please contact Lisa Mason at JFS to volunteer. The next blood drive is July 14th. The Social Action Committee meets Tuesday, March 19th at 1 o'clock p.m. It is a hybrid meeting. Talking with the Rabbi is March 20th, Hebrew School March 20th, Gesher March 21st, and the 3rd and 4th graders will lead service March 22nd. Thank you.
We'll now turn to page 34 of our Siddurim for Adon Olam, page 34. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'et Nasa V'Chev Kol Azai Melech Shamo Nigra V'Yachai Drei Kiblo Takol Levado Yimloch Nora Vehu Haya Vehu Hove Vehu Yiyeh V'Tifara Vehu Echad V'Yein Sheni V'Hamshilo Le'achbira Li Reshi V'Li Tachli V'Lo Ha'oz V'Hamizra Vehu Eli V'Chaya Goali V'Tzor Chevli V'Yetzara Vehu Nisi Omanos Li V'Nat Kosi B'Yom Ekra V'Ya'ado Afkid Ruchi V'Yetz Ishan V'Ya'ira V'Im Ruchi Giviyati Adonai Li V'Lo Ira. Good Shabbos, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Do we